So, let's see. Why's that on there? All right, we're good. Let me know if there's audio problems. I'm still trying to work out the bugs here with the new computer, but thanks everyone for being here. So yeah, I wanted to do that first little section so it could be a standalone video, and then I'll be able to post that in Twitter and other places, because normally my live streams are more meandering, which I don't mind. What's up, Ford Nation? Alan? Great to see everyone. So yeah, thanks for being here. So I know this isn't scheduled. This is a time that I'm going to... it's so weird going with the two jobs. I never know when I'm going to have off. I've been working a ridiculous schedule. Tonight, I got a little bit of time between when I could do this video and then my wife comes home. I haven't seen her for 6 days, so I'm going to spend some time with her, go out to eat or something. And then I got the show with Sarah tonight, right back to the grind tomorrow. So I wanted to, when I could, for my audience, my hair's a mess, to try to do some videos. So yeah. Apologize for the transitioning from one live stream to the other, but instead of just doing a recording because it doesn't go out to all platforms, I figured I would do the live stream and boom, done. By the way I do most of my stuff is I'm not good at editing and I don't really have the time for it, and it's not something I enjoy, so live stream works easier. I could go off the cuff. Almost everything I do is one take, so for better or worse. So yeah. Yeah, I thought that was funny. The Kamala Harris, we'll be talking about that a lot tonight on Sarah Corrier's channel. So please check that out. That'll be a great video tonight. And I know a lot of people were putting in the chat about the young 5-year-old boy that a black man walked up blatantly to, executed. I know that that's being talked about a lot in the chat. That is going to, the reason I'm not going to talk about it much is that's one of the big stories we'll be talking about tonight on Sarah's channel. But yeah, when are we going to find out the sex of the baby? When we have to leave the baby choose, right? Or maybe when they're 18. No, we'll know at the end of August, the next appointment, which is late August. We should know. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'll let everyone know as soon as I let my family know. I'll come on the channel and let everyone know. But yeah, thanks for everyone that's regular here. Thanks for everyone that supports me. So yeah, I don't really have an itinerary for this show here. Because I've been preparing for the show tonight with Sarah. But again, what I'm doing in this kind of transition time is if I see a story, I bookmark it on Twitter, and then it's something we go back to. So what I'll do here shortly is go to Twitter, and we'll just go in order. They're going to be chronologically in order as opposed to categorically in order. So I might bounce from COVID to Black Lives Matter to COVID, things like that. So bear with me. But I think it'll be interesting. I got a lot of good stories. Just real quick on Kamala Harris, just other things about her. I mean, I understand why she was picked. And so much stuff happens. I'll talk to people that aren't that involved in politics, and they'll say things like, why would this be happening? This doesn't make any sense. Well, that's if you're looking at it as a mechanism of, well, the government's here to be good for us, average Americans. It's not. That, especially the Democratic Party, but also a lot of the Republican Party. It's not. They're there to achieve power and to siphon away the wealth and the power that the middle class of this country has. They want globalism. They want everyone totally reliant on the government. They want to treat us as their children. They'll provide us with food and shelter as long as we don't criticize them. They don't want us to have religion. They don't want us to have families. They want us totally isolated and dependent on the government. And then they'll provide for us the bare minimum unless we decide to criticize them. They want to take away all of your freedom. They want to return to feudalism. They want to live on castles at the top of the hill while we're all serfs that live around them and beg for food every day. That's what they want. And once you start to realize that that's what's going on, all of a sudden these decisions make sense. So why would Joe Biden, someone who basically has no opinions himself because of medical infirmity, and it's proven that at the flip of a hat, or the flip of a coin, he'll totally change lifelong positions, right? Like his stance on abortion. He was originally against the amendment saying we can't fund abortion centers. And then after 30 years of being against that, all of a sudden snap his fingers, said, oh, wait, no, now I'm for it. Now I'm for it, right? Now he's to the left and saying a bunch of decisions that he made in his administration when he was vice president under Obama. Now, all of a sudden, he can't be blamed for that. He's further to the left of that, like kids in cages, saying that we had to enforce our borders, other things like that. All of a sudden, no, I'm Joe Biden. I changed my mind. Why would he be their nominee? Why would Kamala Harris, someone who has no principles whatsoever, none? I mean, look, let me talk about the elephant in the room. I know a lot of people are making fun of Kamala Harris sexually because Willie Brown, who was the mayor in LA or the mayor in California somewhere, or governor of California, admitted that when he was 60 and she was 29, she worked on his campaign and he basically gave her the job because they were having an affair. So she slept her way into politics. I don't care that she's promiscuous. I don't. I mean, it's immoral. It's not good. But I really don't care. It's certainly something that more people than just Kamala Harris are guilty of. Though what's ironic to me is the fact that she used the very thing that she claims is victimization to advance her career. So we hear from the left all the time that, oh, if a man in a position of power sleeps with a woman, then that's sexual assault because there's a power imbalance. But she had no problem taking advantage of that situation to benefit herself politically. And if I can say, again, I don't have a problem with women being promiscuous. It's your choice, not something I would favor, but I don't favor it about men either. So, hey, do whatever makes you happy. It's just funny that that's what it took to get her into politics because she wasn't really a principled person. And I just find it funny. We went from Bill Clinton, someone who used his office to obtain sexual favors, to Kamala Harris, someone who used sexual favors to obtain her office. Isn't that great? And yeah, it might not be the classiest thing to talk about. I don't really care. It's equally as unclassy as people that want to bring up Donald Trump's sexual history. And so, like with Stormy Daniels, what did that have to do with anything? He had consensual sex with a woman who then blackmailed him and extorted money out of him, and somehow that made Trump the bad guy. So I don't want to hear anyone get on their high horse by me claiming and correctly pointing out that Kamala Harris slept her way into politics. But it's not really the reason she's bad, so I'm not going to talk about it much. Just an aside. So there you have it. But she is one of the least principled people. We saw this with, Elizabeth Warren was one of the exact same. You read Elizabeth Warren's writings in the early 2000s. She talks about the importance of family, of personal responsibility. Now she couldn't be more different. What's changed? Well, the establishment said, hey, your best chance to get power and to be our stooge and our pawn is to become the female version of Bernie Sanders, like Bernie Sanders light. So just listen to him and adapt his positions. And I told my friends that support Bernie, I said, be careful with Elizabeth Warren. She don't really believe this crap. She'll believe whatever the establishment tells her. So if she thinks it'll get her elected, she'll pretend to be like Bernie. And then as soon as she's elected, when the establishment says, oh, by the way, you're not going to go after the Amazons of the world and all these rich donors that gave your campaign money, all of a sudden she would change like that. Guaranteed. It's the same with Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, forced busing. Oh, forced busing was so good, and Joe Biden was a racist for opposing it. And then the next day, forced busing. Oh, no, that's bad. It's a bad thing. She don't care. So it doesn't make sense. Why would they pick people like this? Well, the reason they pick them is because it's not to be a voice for you, the American citizen. And I honestly mean you, whether you're on the right or the left. Look, I'm not naive. There are reasons to dislike the Republican Party. There are reasons to dislike Donald Trump. I understand we need at least two strong, robust parties, if not more. So I don't begrudge people that want to vote Democrat. I've given my reasons why I never would. And I think everyone shouldn't vote Democrat because they're so disgusting that they weaponize things like sexual assault and they want to destroy this country. But you could make a case that a lot of Republicans are the same way. So I understand why some people would still say, on principle, I'm going to vote for the Democratic Party. But don't you see, they're not putting people up there that care about you. They're putting people that care about their donor class. And that's why they picked the ticket of Biden-Harris. They don't care what your opinions are on things at all. They don't care. They want people that they can tell what to do. And what better than a person who doesn't even know where he is and someone in Kamala Harris who has showed repeatedly time after time that she'll completely change her positions at the snap of a finger as long as it means she could get political power. Perfect ticket. They're going to try to say she's a moderate now when she was just telling you a month and a half ago she's for the Green New Deal. She's for allowing illegal immigrants to have socialized medicine and all this crap. Now they'll tell you, oh, she's moderate. She's moderate. She advocated eliminating private insurance. Now she'll say, no, I'm not for that. And yes, the other thing they'll say is, well, even if she believes that, she's just the vice president, so it'll be Joe Biden's ticket. If you believe Joe Biden will make it more than a year from his inauguration, I got a bridge to sell you. There's no way. I still don't believe Joe Biden will be the final person on the ticket. I really don't. But if he is, like I have a friend that believes if he wins, what they'll do is they'll leave him be in office for a month or two and then say, oh, Biden's health's taken a turn for the worse. Now he's going to have to step down and it's going to be Kamala Harris now. Either way, what she advocated actually mattered. And one of the themes that you see in my show a lot of times is I certainly have positions that I advocate for, and I think my positions are right. And I think with my positions, I do a good job of defending them. However, I could be wrong, and I respect people more who disagree with my positions, but that are honest about it. And they're not hypocrites. So let me give you an example. If you believe that we should practice social distance and never be in crowds, and therefore you're upset with Trump's rally because it was a crowd during the time of a pandemic, I disagree with you. I think that it was okay for that rally to happen. You disagree because you say that these crowds are bad and could jeopardize us by spreading the disease. Fair enough. I disagree with you, but that's a fine position. As long as you believe that those crowds jeopardize us no matter who they are. So if you're also against Black Lives Matter, I say, as long as it's peaceful, Black Lives Matter can go out and protest what they want. I don't think they should be withheld from doing so because of the pandemic. So my take is both Black Lives Matter and Trump, they could both gather as long as it's peaceful and they're not destroying people's property or threatening them, etc. Your take might be, nope, I disagree. I think neither group should be allowed to congregate like that. Okay, we disagree fundamentally, but at least we're both consistent in our positions. I respect that, even if I disagree with you. However, what you see with 95% of people is they'll say what Trump did was immoral, but Black Lives Matter is allowed to go out and protest. They don't need to social distance. That's the position I can't stand because that's a non-principled position. That's a position that reeks of, I just care about political power. Those are the people that say Donald Trump can't talk to the president of the Ukraine about cooperating with an investigation into his political opponent, but I have no problem with the United States and the Obama administration for years working with foreign powers and with our intel agencies to go after Trump for political reasons. They have no principles whatsoever. It's just win by any means necessary. And that's certainly the people running the Democratic Party and many of the people that I'm friends with. They're the same way. They don't care. Believe all women, but not the one that accused Joe Biden. Open borders. I'm in a gated community. I don't have a problem with these riots. Oh my God, they're burning down my house. Call the police. Your light bulbs are hurting the environment. I have a third lake house. I fly in private jets. You're a danger because you own firearms and you like the police. Meanwhile, I want armed security guards at my house. Over and over. Total hypocrites. They don't care because they believe they're morally and intellectually superior. They're neither. And therefore, they're okay with the hypocrisy. Again, I have no problem with people that are principled that disagree with me. In fact, let's talk about COVID for a second. I said from the get-go, you know my position by now if you're watching this. I thought that it was a huge mistake. The biggest threat we had was willfully giving up our rights in the Bill of Rights based on unknown fears. I said that I'm not such a strict libertarian that I'm unwilling to ever temporarily give up some rights for the greater good of the country. Okay? There are situations. In fact, there could be situations with the pandemic. If a disease came through and it wiped out half of New York City, for example, in 1 week, I would understand drastic measures being taken. Totally get it. But that's not what we saw. And instead, I said I would be willing to accept that the government had to take some of my rights away as long as they're totally transparent and they give a credible case for why taking those rights away might help. And I said they have to talk about things like, what is the threshold for when they can take these rights away? What would the threshold be for giving our rights back? How many lives would be lost or severely affected without these measures? How many would be saved because of these measures? I didn't need exact numbers, but I needed reasonings and a kind of ballpark figures. They gave none of that. And I said, that's the biggest danger. This is going to be used for political power to screw over normal Americans. I said, they're going to start passing $1 trillion budgets to fight this. And that money's not going to go into the hands of normal Americans. It's going to make rich people richer. It's going to make the political class more powerful. That's exactly what's happened. I exactly predicted it. Exactly. Go back and watch my videos from March. And meanwhile, I had a bunch of Trump supporters telling me, you're nuts. No, this is a serious pandemic. You're nuts. We need to do all this stuff. Trump's right to say that Gavin Newsom and that Mayor Cuomo are doing the right thing with the lockdown. Trump's right to criticize Georgia for saying they didn't want to do a lockdown. That's what many Trump supporters were telling me. And they stopped watching me. And I went from having 40, 50 people watching a live stream to like 20. That's okay. I don't care. I'm going to be me. I'm not going to follow Trump just because he's the guy I voted for. He was wrong then, and everyone who supported him when he was wrong was also wrong. And now we see I was right, that it was used to obtain political power, and that the experts that we had to trust all of a sudden started saying things like, oh, yeah, COVID might kill millions of us, but white supremacy is a bigger threat, so it's okay to go out and violate these orders as long as you're doing it for Black Lives Matter. Geez, don't you look a fool now, Trump supporter? Trust the experts, right? Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for being here, man. And yeah, thanks for anyone in your audience that's watching. But that's what I said. But just to get back to the point, what I said was I would rather have a leader that said, look, here's a difficult choice. Here's exactly, I'm going to be as transparent as, let's say it was my governor, right? Our governor in Pennsylvania, if he would have came out and said, look, this is tough. I understand rights are important, the economy is important, but here's what our predictive models are for this pandemic. Here's our predictive models if we do these social distancing orders. So we're going to continue to reevaluate this. We're going to be as transparent as possible to you, but we do think that we need to have temporary lockdowns. I would have been against those lockdowns, but I would have said, hey, I'm against it, but at least they're being transparent, and I truly believe they're doing this to try to help Pennsylvanians or Americans or whatever state you're in. Instead, they acted smugly. How dare you ask us questions? Trust the experts. And then my governor, Tom Wolf, said, you're a coward if you're upset that you can't go to work and feed your family, or if you can't go to your parents' funeral. You're a coward, and I'll take away your license to operate a business. And then 3 days later, he violated his own social distancing order to march with Black Lives Matter and took a nice picture next to a guy not wearing a mask and another guy holding a sign that said Blue Lives Murder. When he was asked about it, he's like, yeah, I did that. That was hypocritical. Yep. Moving on, next question. That's what he did. In other words, I could respect leaders that are transparent, even if they're making decisions I don't agree with. If it's obvious that they're trying their best to help the people, even if it's the wrong decision, at least it's a decision. What I don't respect is hypocrites, even if they claim to agree with me. And Kamala Harris is one of the biggest. Anyone who's willing to change their position at the drop of a hat is someone that you shouldn't trust. It is clearly someone who only wants political power. So just because she's saying today what you want her to say doesn't mean that's what she'll actually be pushing for. What do I say in my channel all the time? I truly mean this. I have a lot of friends on the left. I want my channel to be for people on the right, the left, independent, maybe even people that just think I'm funny and good looking and don't have a good take on politics or understand it. That's fine. I'll take all viewers. But I truly am trying to talk to all groups of people. And I say this all the time. What is your issue? What's your most important issue if you're on the left? Is it pro-choice? Is it climate change? Is it getting money out of politics? I don't agree with some of those issues. Like, I'm vehemently, okay, especially the pro-choice movement. However, I acknowledge that there are people with all kinds of different issues. And I'm here to tell you, whatever your issue is, it does not matter if your vote doesn't matter. If the people that you vote for are just telling you what you want to hear, and then they go off and do what they want to benefit the powerful and the establishment, it doesn't matter what your issue is. All you could do is hope and pray that the establishment agrees with your take on that particular issue. So if you're anti-war, I got bad news for you. They don't agree with you. You're not going to see anti-war. And even when Trump just says, hey, we're going to start pulling some troops back, they go nuts. The Party of Peace, the Democrats, all of my friends that were out there marching with me when we said the Iraq war was bad, they say, boy, you've changed, Rob. What happened? Remember when we were in college and we were all against the Iraq war? What happened to you? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Obama started pushing for the wars and you became for them. And then Trump started advocating against for bringing troops back, and now you're for leaving the troops. I'm not the one who changed. You changed because you weren't principled. You just said, I agree with this party. I agree with the Democratic Party. So whatever they say is what I agree with. And if all of a sudden, because I've changed positions, you no longer agree with me, I'll say you changed. I was talking to someone today who was telling me, he's like, yeah, I can't believe you're into politics. It just seems so messy and I just get bored with it. I totally understand that. I think it's important for people to have somewhat of an understanding of politics because we're living in trying times where one of the major political parties is actively trying to destroy this country and the other major political party is too cowardly to stop them. So it's important for average Americans, regardless if you lean left, right, or center, to understand a bare minimum about politics. But I understand people that don't want. It's tough. It's depressing. It's horrible and messy and ugly. And it leads to people screaming at each other. And it leads to people cutting off relationships with their friends and family. It leads to all that. It's tough. I come home from work, I work 80, 90 hours a week. I come home and I just want to watch TV sometimes. I don't want to do politics. Sometimes I like doing it. Sometimes I don't. So I totally get the people that are like, dude, I work on a farm all day. I don't want to come home and turn on late night comedy and hear politics. That's what I wanted to hear comedy. I don't want to turn on the football game and see politics. I want to see football. So I get it. They don't want to be involved in this. But I was talking to them and I said, look, here's the thing. People get it wrong with the political party thing, okay? I find the less someone's involved actively with politics, the more I end up liking them in many cases. And here's why. Because oftentimes, and I've seen this with Republicans too, you'll ask someone, what do you think about X? And their response is basically, well, what does my party think about X? That's what I think. That's the wrong way to look at things. So if you're not involved in politics and you couldn't tell, I don't know what the Republican position is or the Democrat position is, I'm more likely to get a truthful answer from you. This is what I really believe. What do you think of open borders? I think we need to limit some of the people that come in. Oh, so you're a Republican? I don't know. I don't know what the Republican position is. I don't know. Are Democrats for that? Are they again? I was asking this person. I'm like, yes, exactly. It's not the political party that you're favoring. It's you have some ideas. That's how I try to live my life. Now, granted, I'm a hypocrite as well. I fail at times, but I try to say, here are my positions. If you're a politician that happens to, in good faith, agree with those positions, I'll probably support you. If you're someone who just pays lip service to them, I'll find out and call you out. It's that simple, but I'm not going to defend you all the time on every issue just because you agree with me on one issue. And I'm sick and tired of that's how it goes. And we often see that it leads to insane things like the very people. Just take Hollywood, take the music industry. I was into punk music and metal. I had all these CDs and went to all these concerts like No Effects and all these punk bands. It was like punk against Bush. Bush lied, people died. You know, Bruce Springsteen was out there rocking. We were bringing back the old classic rock anti-war movement. Yeah, we're doing it, man. Yeah, people are marching against it. And so the establishment was like, here's what we do. Why don't we take a guy, he'll be the first black president, we'll give him the Nobel Peace Prize, we'll make him a Democrat, and he'll just continue all the wars. Now, all of those people, all those Hollywood elite, those musicians, Bruce Springsteen, No Effects, now all of a sudden they're like, yay, war! Yay, the wars are good now! Yay! And then anyone who's still principled and says, no, I was against these wars under Bush, I'm against them under Obama. Now, you've changed. Are you racist? Do you hate Obama because he's black? I mean, you're anti-war because you hate black people, right? That's why. What are you talking about? My position hasn't changed. Yeah, good point, Warhead. You say you might not care about politics, but politics cares about you. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So that's what we see. That's why I have no respect for Kamala Harris. None. Because she changed it. Now, I don't mind politicians gradually over time saying, you know what? I used to, for example, gay marriage. I'm for gay marriage. I understand there are politicians like, look, times have changed. I'm now for gay marriage. That's different if you gradually change your position. But when you're willing to radically change positions, and not only policy positions, but radically change, I think this guy's a sexual assaulter. Oh, no, I think that his accusers are liars. When you're willing to change at the drop of a hat like that, just when it happens to benefit you politically, that is a person you can't trust, period. All right. Let's get to the window. Let's do some tweets, huh? News story tweets. It's going to be a hodgepodge, so I apologize. It'll be messy here. To the board! Phil Kerpen, someone I knew from the debate community, one of the smartest people you ever meet. Worth a follow on Twitter. Probably the best person reporting in the country on COVID, in particular COVID's effect when it comes to children. Phil Kerpen says on August 6th, somebody flattened the curve. This was the original. Let me make sure you guys can see this. This is what we were originally told. Flatten the curve, right? And the argument was, we have like 15 days to flatten the curve. Remember this? So the argument was never, if we do protective measures, then less people will get COVID. The argument was always, let's say 1 million people were going to get COVID. The question is, do we want all 1 million to get it in 10 days? Or do we want to flatten it out over months? Because if they all get it in 10 days, there'll be a burden on our hospital system and we won't be able to properly take care. That's what flatten the curve means. If they meant less people get COVID, they wouldn't have said flatten the curve, because flattening the curve still means the same amount of people get it. So here was kind of models that we saw without protective measures. See how it spikes and it's above our healthcare system capacity. You see that? But if we have protective measures, then it flattens the curve. Now remember, Dr. Fauci said the state we should emulate is New York, which we'll get to more of that later, right? Democrat places like New York and New Jersey, they're the ones that flatten the curve. They're the ones that are telling us they're morally superior. And it's all these evil Republicans. Their states are doing so bad. Remember that? I remember. Now, did you see that model? Oops. There we go. Let me show you this again. Ready? Flatten the curve. You see that? If we don't have protection measures, there's a big mountain, and then there's just a little hill if we do have protective measures, which is spread out a longer. That's what we were looking for, according to the experts. Right? Right? And the blue states did it well, right? They're the ones that flattened the curve. Oh, wait. Huh. Isn't that odd? So it looks like New Jersey looked exactly like the worst case scenario that would be above our healthcare capacity. And Arizona actually flattened the curve. That's what it looks like to me. Yet you wouldn't know that. I had people on my old debate with Destiny where we talked about COVID. I have someone on that video right now telling me, you were clearly wrong about COVID. Was I? Well, look at the amount of people that are being infected. Yes, because we're testing more. They say places like New Jersey and New York that had these sorts of peaks early, they say, oh, look how good they're doing now. Yes, because you killed off the vulnerable population. You intentionally spread COVID through the nursing homes and killed all of the people that would die from it. And now you brag, hey, look how great we're doing now. Yes, because your per capita deaths are 10 times that of places like Arizona and Florida. And Dr. Fauci, the lead medical expert, says we should have did it like New Jersey. We should have did it like New York. So when they tell you to trust the experts, and the experts are saying that we should have went with the blue area here as opposed to the orange, when at first they told you we're looking for a pattern that looks like the orange and not the blue's the worst case scenario, they are lying to you. Yeah, I know the numbers are garbage. And let me address this real quick. I too believe that there are so many problems with the number of deaths rates that come from COVID, the number of infected, etc. When I'm talking about graphs like this, you have to understand this. As soon as you say that, even though I can make a case for it, and I will argue it and have done many times, you have to understand people on the other side will say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You don't believe the numbers. Therefore, we're not going to trust you. We're not going to listen to anything you say. That's what they'll say. So I'm able to argue at that level, and I'm also able to argue, even if we accept these numbers are right, here's why you're still wrong, which is exactly what this graph shows. Even if we believe the recorded numbers, they're still wrong. Their narrative's still garbage, even if we accept their numbers. Now, we can have a discussion on whether or not the numbers are worth accepting. I don't think they are. But that's why when people ask me, why do you even deal with this stuff? Like, the numbers are wrong. Not everyone believes that. And you're trying to convince as broad of an audience as possible that we're being lied to. And that these positions advocated by these so-called experts are being used for political reasons because they're trying to make the country as terrible as possible so they could blame it on Trump and win an election. They're trying to wipe out the middle class. And they're doing a darn good job. Next, my boy Kerpen again. He says, the CDC now reports that 4,127 death certificates in the COVID count also list intentional and unintentional injury, poisoning, and other adverse effects. And then from July 23rd, he says, we saw a motorcycle accident with COVID on the death certificate. A rarity? Not really. The CDC reports that 3,721 death certificates under COVID also count intentional, unintentional injury, poisoning, and other adverse effects. Now that number's up to 4,100. So you got poisoned? You had an accident? That was COVID. Died in a motorcycle? That was COVID. That's the CDC admitting it. How many times did it happen without the CDC admitting? So that gets to your point that the numbers are all lies. Absolutely. Absolutely lies. And I had a big thing planned out, which maybe I'll get to at some point, where I actually go through the CDC's data. And if you look, the important thing to look at, the best measure that I could come up with is excess deaths, right? So I wish I'd have pulled this up for you today. So you can go to the CDC and you could look week by week how many excess deaths there were over the period of 95 to 2017, right? So what you do is you take the average amount of people that died in, say, the first week of June, on average between 1995 and 2017. And let's say that was a week that was 30,000 Americans dying. And so now, if this year in June, 40,000 Americans died, maybe that suggests that 10,000 died of COVID, right? That could be what that suggests. However, there's a problem even with that because many people are dying because of the economic ramifications, because of the lack of health care of other things, because people are afraid to go to the hospital because of COVID, because they were unable to go get proper medical procedures because hospitals wouldn't let them because of COVID, because of things like substance abuse and depression and other mental health ailments that actually physically affect you and could lead to you dying. For example, how many old people suffered depression and lost a will to live because they could no longer see their family in the nursing homes they were in because they were worried of COVID? And so what these CDC numbers suggest, at the same time, they're saying, yes, there are substantial excess deaths. We're told there was 150,000 COVID deaths. But actually, when you look at the excess deaths, there's about 80,000 excess deaths from other illnesses that don't include COVID, such as Alzheimer's, heart conditions, etc. And according to the CDC, these are all things that weren't COVID. These were independent. So what is it why are we suffering about 80,000 additional excess deaths? And that's the nefarious thing. Because of these lockdowns, again, I've never claimed that COVID's not serious. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we need to ask ourselves questions. How serious is it? What's your threshold for how many people would die before we have to collapse the U.S. economy and strip people of their rights? And if you're going to do there's so much to talk about in this. If you're going to do some sort of lockdown, you need to do an almost total and complete lockdown. Doing a half-ass lockdown is not going to do it. So there's two types of diseases that could lead to a lot of fatalities. There are diseases that are incredibly lethal. And so if it affects even a small portion of people, many people will die. That's not what COVID is. It now turns out that COVID's lethality is less than 0.5%, the most recent numbers we have. Less than 0.5%. That puts it on par basically with the bad flu season as far as lethality. Now, it could spread more and therefore kill more people than the flu. But as far as if you get it, what are your chances to die? It's not very high. And so with diseases like that, they're going to spread way further. So what we do, instead of with the real deadly disease, your best hope is to try to lock everything down. Because if someone gets the disease, they're likely to die of it. But with diseases like this that are going to kill people because they spread so far, you can't really contain the spread. It's going to happen. So what you could do best is protect the most vulnerable population, which is exactly what I suggested doing from the get-go. Instead of saying we have to crush the economy, which is going to lead to real people dying in the short term and certainly in the long term and have effects for the next decade, instead of doing that and giving away our rights, what we should have immediately done said, who are the most vulnerable? The very young and the very old. Let's do everything we can to make sure that we're isolating everyone in nursing homes as much as possible, making sure they have the proper care, the proper health services, the proper testing, etc., and leave everyone else continue to work so that we're able to have an economy to get those resources to the most vulnerable. Instead, what we did was we locked down everyone, we collapsed the economy, and we took sick people and put them in the nursing homes with the most vulnerable population, which led to tens of thousands of deaths. So we did the exact opposite of what we should do. But I'm told, oh, you didn't take COVID seriously. I disagree. I took it very seriously. You're the people that advocated a lockdown system that led to sending COVID patients to nursing homes, which caused tens of thousands of deaths. But yes, the numbers are being inflated. Next. We'll skip that one. Per Worldometers, and they're using CDC and other official health organizations around the world. Here is per capita deaths. You ready? Let me make sure you guys are seeing it. Yeah. New Jersey, ran by a Democrat, 1,793. New York, that right here, this number right here. You see this? New York, you see that? That's Dr. Fauci, the lead expert that we're told you have to trust. You have to trust him on everything. You got to believe him about everything. He said New York was the model. Cuomo, the governor of New York, he did it right. There you go. Number 2 in the world of deaths per capita. So per 1 million people, 1,686 died in New York. Massachusetts basically ran by Democrats. 1,256 deaths. Connecticut, ran by Democrats, 1,245 per capita deaths. United Kingdom, 677. Spain, 608. Sweden, 564. USA as a total, even with those numbers from those states, 461. Not too shabby. Florida, the place we hear about that's done so terrible. Even a guest I had on the show has told me, I said, what governors did it well and what governor did poorly? And he alluded to DeSantis in Florida was so bad. And Cuomo did so good. 345. Five times better than New York. More than 5 times better. And yet, all we hear in Texas, how bad's Texas doing? But all we hear is, oh man, New York did it right. Those Democrat Cuomo, his approval's at like 70%. Do you need more evidence of how important winning the culture war was and how important controlling the narrative is? Literally, the guy that stands in the second worst place basically in the world for per capita deaths, he's considered a hero. He did a great job. We know for a fact that he ordered COVID patients into nursing homes. And he's praised as doing the right thing by the premier expert, Dr. Fauci. Meanwhile, they're crapping on Florida that's doing worlds better. It's unbelievable. And still I have people saying, trust the science. You're not an expert. You got to listen to the experts. How do you explain that discrepancy in the data? How do you explain that we should model ourselves after New York, which was the state that was basically the worst? What's your explanation? Will the experts say that? Yes. That doesn't prove that that position's right. It proves the experts are wrong. If we would have listened to them and listened to the policies of New York, we wouldn't have flattened the curve. We would have tens of thousands of more people dying. Yes, Democrats did put 6 people in nursing homes. That absolutely happened. Let me check something real quick and then we'll move on. Whoop. If you're on YouTube, I lost your comments. Let's see here. And I get you, Blase. I do think that the numbers are actually much lower than even what's stated. But again, you understand, I'm using their numbers to disprove them. I'm using the numbers they say look at to show that their position is ridiculous. And yeah, BPW, maybe that is why math's racist. All right, moving on. Paul Joseph Watson on August 6th says, quote from Oprah, "Whites have a leg up. You still have your whiteness. That's what the term white privilege means. It means that whiteness still gives you an advantage no matter what." Median U.S. household income by selected ethnic groups in 2018. Indian Americans, then Taiwanese, then Chinese, then Japanese, then Pakistani, then Filipino, then Indonesian, then Korean, then Cambodian, then Hmong, then Vietnamese, then white people. Almost making half as much as Indian Americans. Now, what kind of white supremacy system is this? So what we're led to believe is whites set up this system to advantage only white people. That was the idea. But they were so bad at setting up that system that all of these people of color destroy them under their own system. So what's the explanation? I would love to hear this. And what they're really saying when they say this is what they're saying. And I've done this example with all of these debates that I've done, right? I'll ask something like this. I'll say, let's take 2 people. Let's take a black person. We'll call him Bob, B for black, and a white person, we'll call him Will, And Bob's family went through slavery and, Jim Crow and all these terrible things. And so when Bob was born in 2002, he was born to a single mother who was making $30,000 a year. Real challenging life. And then there's Will. And Will didn't go through slavery. And his family didn't go through Jim Crow. But they were worked in a small mill, right? In a small town with a mill. And the mill collapsed. And they've had a really difficult time economically. And so by the time Will was born, he's born on the exact same day as Bob, in the exact same town, in the exact same hospital, to a single mother making $30,000 a year. So both Bob and Will are born to single mothers making $30,000 a year. Why is it that Will's more privileged than Bob? Both of them are in the exact same financial situation. But because Will's white, he's privileged? And when I ask this to people, they say, well, here's the thing. Potentially, Will's ancestors had an opportunity to be more successful. What's that got to do with Will? So he should be punished because his families didn't take advantage of the system? That's the argument? It makes no sense. And they know it. They know that it's garbage. But that's their entire worldview. White supremacy, everything. And so they have to ignore all these groups that aren't white, people of color that do better than white people on average, and say, oh no, the system's geared to only benefit white people. And so by extension, what they're saying is, if you're a white person and you're not doing so good, that's because you're inferior. That's why. If you have privilege because you're whiteness and you only make a median income of $65,000 and you're way behind all these groups of color, well, think about it. The Vietnamese and the Hmong and the Cambodian and Korean and Indian and Taiwanese and Chinese and Japanese and Pakistani and Filipino, they all were incredibly victims of white supremacy in the system, right? Institutional racism, yet they're outperforming whites. So it must prove that they're genetically superior than whites, right? What other explanation is there? If they're all equal and whites have a system that privileges them, then there's no explanation for why whites wouldn't be on top, right? Other than, well, white people must be inferior. So when you look at the people that are actually making the genetic inferiority arguments, it's Oprah. It's people on the left. It's people that are seeking to say that poor homeless white guy you see on the street owes LeBron James something because LeBron James is underprivileged as a black person. It is disgusting, and it helps advance class warfare, and it helps keep the rich and powerful the only people that have a voice. That's what the focus on race does. Make no mistake about it, and Black Lives Matter is a huge part of that, as is certainly Oprah. I'm going to listen to Oprah talk to me about privilege, please. I'm not going to read this article, but next. New Gallup poll shows black Americans want police to retain local presence. Yep, that's right. In fact, maybe I will read it. It's worth. going to load. Is this not going to load? There we go. Black Americans a bit more likely than most other groups to see police locally. Still, most, 81% of blacks, want police to spend the same amount or more time in their area. But wait a minute. All of the white Antifa people that are bussing into these black inner city neighborhoods and starting riots, they assure me that blacks all want the police defunded. They want less of a presence. When I talked to Prime K's, the Twitch streamer that I debated on Black Lives Matter, what did he tell us? Oh, that's all the violence. When we see this inner city violence, it's because of the police. That's what's going on. They're just peaceful, great neighborhoods until the police show up, which causes all the homicide, which causes all the violent crime and the burglaries. That's what he told me. The same with the riots, right? That riot you saw, the looting in Chicago the other night, you know, when there was no police presence and they just decided to loot, that's because of the police, says Prime K's and Black Lives Matter. That's what's going on. It's the police's fault. You see? You see how that works? It's not their fault. It's not the actual rioters' fault. It's the police's fault they're rioting. Yet that's strange. The majority, by far the majority of black people, say they would like to see the police continue to be in their neighborhoods or have an increased presence. So how's that jive with the narrative we hear from the media? Oh, these black people just want the cops out of their community. That's all they want. Well, guess what? That's another reason I'm against Black Lives Matter. Because in addition to them being against the nuclear family, which, by the way, is the number one problem with our country today, not just in the black community, but in all communities. Well, the number one problem is the corruption we see in government, that they're actively trying to destroy this country. But the number two problem is a lack of two-parent households. It is. It's just true. Why would it be that Black Lives Matter would want to dismantle that? Because they're not there to help the black community. They're there to make government your God. They want government to be your family. And so they don't want you to have a family. But another reason that I'm against Black Lives Matter is because defunding or getting rid of the police, like we see in places like Seattle, will make things worse for all Americans. And the first Americans that it will affect negatively are inner city black communities, where homicide rates will spike, as we're seeing right now. But I'm the racist if I'm against Black Lives Matter, because I don't want to see black communities fall apart when we embrace the ideology of Black Lives Matter. You see how that works? Next. Happening now. University yoga students and staff hold unique die-in in protest of school's planned reopening. This is University of Georgia. This is one of the dumbest things I can imagine. Well, not only the theatrics of this and how stupid it is, and the fact that we could see that when it comes to people that are college-aged and younger, COVID's actually far less lethal than even the influenza virus. I don't remember die-ins about influenza. But what you see with the teachers' unions and with students like this is what they want. They want that degree, but they don't want to go to school. They want to get paid for teaching, but they don't want to actually teach. So I say, if these students are so adamant they don't want the University of Georgia to reopen, fine, then don't reopen. And tell all these students, you're not getting any academic credit. Sorry, no degree for you. Problem solved. Now you don't have to risk yourself. No, they don't want that. Then they'll say, that's not fair. We paid tuition. We want our degree. Is there any more proof at the failures of modern academia? We all implicitly know it's just a transactional relationship. You pay money, you get indoctrinated to hate America, and then you get a degree so you could go get a job. That's the idea. But the actual getting a real education is irrelevant at this point. Hence why you see so many professors and academics saying, oh, we should just give black students A's. We should give anyone who's stressed out about the protest and stressed out about Donald Trump, they shouldn't have to take the test and get A's. We should allow students to receive grades for not even attending classes. Because the education's not important. As long as the schools are getting the money, that's all they care about. Meanwhile, the people running these schools, they'll sit there and tell you how morally superior they are, and they care about the young people. Yet, at the same time, we have to listen to Bernie Sanders say, oh my goodness, look at how students are perpetually in debt, and we're creating indentured servants by the increasing cost of academia. Yes, who's the bad guy in this story? Academia. They're the ones charging more and more for less and less of a product. Yet somehow, Bernie's solution is, let's pay them guaranteed government money. You think that the schools are all of a sudden going to be like, oh, now we'll go back to teaching students now that we're guaranteed to get all this government money for free schooling for everyone. You think that's going to work? One of the blessings of COVID is this. Hopefully it destroys academia because people are realizing how worthless it is. I've always been a rural person in my life. I defend rural people predominantly because that's where I've lived my whole life, and I feel like they've been treated like crap. When I say rural people, I don't mean white, I don't mean Christians, I don't mean straight people, I don't mean men. I mean everyone that lives in communities like mine, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your sexual preference, etc. That's who I'm talking about. I feel like we're derided as flyover country or clinging to guns and Bibles or uneducated rubes, and I'm sick and tired of it. So regardless of your race, ethnicity, all of that stuff, that's who I predominantly talk to and try to defend. But I care about all Americans, I really do. I just don't know as much about other communities. But I appreciate people that want to defend those communities. I absolutely do. One of the things we're starting to see, or even despite me being someone who focuses on rural, wasn't there something cool about the idea of cities like New York City? I mean, say what you want. New York City was the greatest city in the world, right? Wasn't it? It was fantastic. There's something about that, right? Like you listen to that Sinatra song. If I could make it here, I could make it anywhere. There was this, it's like how I imagine, like in the movie Gladiator, right? Where he's like, you know, what is it about Rome? It's not the city, it's the idea. That's what it was like. Just picture what it would have been like to live in the ancient world. With Rome was this shining beacon, this city, the city. That's kind of what New York was. Not to that level, but still. As an American, I was proud of that. I thought that was cool. They're failing. New York's going to crumble. The cities, the great American cities were going to crumble. And COVID's a big part of it. Not because of the disease, because people are now starting to realize, wait a minute, why do I live here? Why do I live in this city where the mayor's encouraging rioting? If I have a business or a home in downtown, it'll just be destroyed and no one will do anything to defend it. Meanwhile, I'm paying insane property taxes and insane costs of living. And now because of COVID, I learned I could do everything digitally. So even if I work at a company that I need to attend every day, I could do it via my computer. I'm going to move to the suburbs. I'm going to move to rural America. Now, if you do that, please don't bring your crappy politics. That's what destroyed the city in the first place. It's the same with the teachers' unions. I keep telling, I'm the only person in the country here saying this. Hey, teachers, you better get in charge of your unions. You better start to get in control, because what's going to happen is Americans are going to start to realize, oh, these teachers are totally irrelevant. We don't need them. So instead of paying tax money to pay these teachers' salaries, why don't we give that money that we collect in taxes, either give it back to people or give it to parents and then allow them to proceed with their own education opportunities for their children, whether it be digital school, charter schools, religious colloquial institutions, things like that. Whatever, they'll all do better than public academia, which is a disaster and just teaches kids, indoctrinates them to hate America and to buy into these Marxist principles. So if you're conservative, actually one of the silver linings of this COVID lockdown is it's going to destroy some of the most fundamental, arrogant institutions. It's going to destroy education as we know it, which is great. But it's also going to destroy cities, which is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the smug people that run it and that have overlooked the rest of us in the country, I guess, you're like, see? But on the other hand, it's sad to see these great American cities perish the way they're going to. But that's what's going to happen. So when it comes to these die-ins, like, good luck to you. Good luck. I hope they give the students exactly what they want. Yep, you're right. You can't come back. Good luck. Oh, you're a sophomore now? Guess what? You wasted all that money that you put in your degree. We're not going to reopen now. Not until there's a vaccine. So good luck. Have fun sitting at home. You better social distance. So don't do anything for 3 years. Just sit in your mom's basement, right? Next, Joe Biden. This is that same graph I showed you earlier. Joe Biden from August 7th says, President Trump called Arizona a model for applying science-based approach to decreasing cases and hospitalizations without implementing and punishing lockdown. He said Governor Ducey's approach should be used by other states. But here's what's really happening in Arizona. Yeah, you see? There you have it. There's your Democratic candidate. New York and New Jersey is the way to go, not Arizona. Next. Here's an old woman imploring people to stop looting and rioting. Black Lives Matter, peaceful protest, right? Here they are throwing paint on her. They're yelling, this isn't your world anymore. They're attacking an old woman. I wonder if it was the wall of moms. Remember that? So the propaganda victory that we saw that was trying to be waged in Portland was, oh, now it's just moms. It's a wall of moms. Donald Trump's evil foot soldiers are attacking a wall of moms. Check out the wall of moms attacking grandma here, right? Oh, this isn't real Black Lives Matter. This isn't real Antifa. I ask all the people on the left, all the Black Lives Matter. Oh, this must be because of the police. That's why these masked thugs and terrorists are attacking this old woman. And by the way, that old woman has more bravery than almost every single Republican leader we have in the country. So kudos to that old woman for standing up to these violent, thuggish terrorists. But you won't hear this reported, will you? Let me check just what's going on YouTube real quick. Yeah, that lady does need a medal. All right, next. That was great. The reporter tried to shame Trump for not wearing a mask because the people at his golf course weren't wearing a mask, and he said it was a peaceful protest. Yep, exactly. New Jersey says you're allowed to not wear a mask if it's a peaceful protest. So, yep. Good on Trump for that. I thought that was good. Next. Just more hypocrisy. This is Bill Malugan from August 7th. A public records request reveals that LA City Councilman Mike Bonin, who voted to defund LAPD by $15 million, has called LAPD to his home 8 times since April 4th, including to provide extra patrols and protection from peaceful protesters at his house. You see? No police for you, police for them. All around the country, this is what's happening. Absolute stunning hypocrisy. When someone tells you something's not good for you, but then they're doing that thing, don't believe them. They're a liar. It might not be good for you, but they have no moral superiority or intellectual superiority to tell you what to do. When your leader says, trust me, you can't go get a haircut, and then goes and gets a haircut, they're lying to you. When they say you don't need the police, but they're calling the police every day, they're lying to you. And if we had a credible media, stories like that would be mainstream every day. If we're asking Americans to sacrifice, why can't the people that are supposed to be the voice and the representatives of Americans be asked to engage in the same sacrifices? Instead, they're collecting cush government salaries and violating their own social distancing orders. John Levine, August 8. Democrat New York City Councilman Paul Vallone says hydrochloroquine saved his life. There was another Democrat woman who said this, and both of them have been roundly attacked. Again, I'm not an expert. I can't tell you if hydrochloroquine will save your life or not. But there are certainly credible studies that suggest that it might have an impact, particularly if taken early on when you're diagnosed with COVID. The fact that so many on the left, the Democrats, the media, the tech companies, etc., are censoring any of that information is absolutely disgusting. Never forget, it's not a question of if we find out at the end of the day if hydrochloroquine actually worked or not. There were credible people saying it was potentially something that could help save lives. And the fact that so many people said, you can't even discuss it, we need to censor that from the internet, is disgusting and shows that they would rather have people die than have a medicine work and save lives, as long as that medicine could be said to support Donald Trump. Or in other words, hydrochloroquine was something Trump mentioned, so they'd rather have people die than people get saved using it. It's the God's honest truth, and you know it. One of the most disgusting things you can imagine. But then again, these are the same Democrats that actively said, geez, who's the most vulnerable population? Oh, it's old people. I know. We'll take old people, put them in nursing homes, and then take COVID patients and throw them in those nursing homes and lock them all in there, and then be shocked when tens of thousands of people die in nursing homes. So if they're willing to kill your grandma for political power, which is what they did, because they killed your grandma, or many people's grandmas and grandpas, and then pointed to the deaths and said, see, that's why we needed to lock you down, because look how many people are dying. So they killed them with their policies and then point to those deaths to say why they need to strip your rights and collapse the economy. And they'll get away with it too, because they control the narrative, because Republicans are feckless and they won't speak up about it. Next. And we'll skip that one. Now that Chaz has ended, residents are coming forward with tales of horror. I'm thankful residents are now affirming what I reported. Andy No has been fantastic on reporting. He says, one of the quotes here from the New York Times, they barricaded us all in here, Mr. Khan said, and they were sitting in lawn chairs with guns. You can check the article you're out for yourself. It's New York Times. I'm not going to click on it to give them clicks. But as we all knew, remember, this was the summer of love, said Seattle's mayor. Remember that? Turns out they were extorting businesses. There were sexual assaults going unreported. They were intimidating people with firearms. They killed a 14-year-old black kid, which you could hear the audio of them shooting like 30 times into the car and then saying, oh, he's still breathing, and shooting 3 more times. He wasn't breathing after that. Imagine if their actual cops did that. But in an effort to get rid of the cops, Chaz separated, then they built a wall, then they stopped and frisked people, then they created a security or a police force that murdered citizens. But those are the people we need to put in charge. That was the summer of love. Next. This was cool. It's someone who works with people that are developmentally disabled. A special needs adult ran onto stage to hug Trump, and then they all did. Trump hugged them all. That's our president. I agree. I think that, I have a lot to criticize Trump about. I've criticized a lot of things. I'm still voting for Trump. I'm still a Trump supporter. I still think he's the best president in my lifetime. But there are mistakes that he's made. But I feel that Trump's truly a good person, even though he says some things that are maybe outlandish at times and things like that. And kudos to him for this. Now, I'm not saying Obama wouldn't have did this or Biden wouldn't have did this, but that's kind of against the narrative that he was, hatred of people with mental challenges or disabilities. Remember when he did the thing with his hands and they were like, oh, that's because that reporter was disabled. No, it wasn't. He did that thing with his hands 7-8 times to different reporters. That's just something he does to mock them. So, cool little story. You won't hear that reported, though. Next, Ezra Levant, formerly of Rebel News, maybe still currently of Rebel News. Oh, yeah, says still of Rebel News. An Ontario mayor banned kids from playing hockey and has pandemic fines of up to $100,000. But for weeks, he has secretly been using his city arena for him and his friends to play hockey at the cost of $1,000 a day. We caught the bastard red-handed. Now, these are the type of stories I'm talking about. I don't understand why people don't grab pitchforks and chase these people out of office. Remember Lori Lightfoot, the Chicago mayor? When she told everyone she would fine them if they went to hair salons, and then she went to a salon, and she's asked about it by a reporter, and she's like, yeah, I care about my hygiene. I'm the face of this city, so I have to have my hair done. I don't know how she wasn't chased out of the room right then. But this is the type of crap you see. These are the leaders. They're so concerned about social distancing, yet when the curtain's down, when you're not watching, they're violating their orders all the time. Rules for you, not for them. That's a dictatorship. That's what they're offering. Next. Daniel Levitt, August 8th, says, once again, my father, Stanford Nobel laureate Professor Michael Levitt, is proven right with his Gompertz curve predictions. In his February analysis of COVID was adopted by governments, global recession and millions of indirect deaths would have been avoided. Someone asked me to look at Illinois versus Florida. Several interesting things emerged. Florida has an older population, but is less dense. They clearly have a different seasonality. Florida has a much lower per capita deaths and using real day of death data near perfect Gompertz curve. So let's see it. You see what's going on? We see that we had a spike in all of these Democrat-controlled places. They didn't flatten the curve. Then places like Florida that did flatten the curve, they're now saying, oh, think about what that means. Flattening the curve. You see what this means? So on the 25th, for example, we look at Illinois, right? You see how high that was, how it spiked? They told us that's what we needed to avoid, right? Now, inevitably, even if you looked at their original, let's go back and look at their original model. Right? Oh, wait. Right here. This is what they originally wanted. This is what all the doctors wanted with protective measures to flatten the curve. So let's look at this. Let's say, we'll just put some hashes here. This was March. This was April. This is May. June, July, whatever, just hypothetically. So you could see, even though clearly this first curve is what they were trying to avoid and what they said was bad, right? That's what they said. There would be a point, like right here, where you would be able to look at state that did the gray and state that did the green. And if you wanted, and you were someone who was only engaged in political power, not the truth, you would say, oh, look, the green state here. Look, the green state's worse than the gray state now. But the green state did exactly what you wanted. They flattened the curve. So, of course, by flattening it, you're dragging it out longer. And so when someone does exactly what they want, they go, aha, now there's more cases in the green state. That proves they were wrong. But that was always going to be the case, even under their best predictions. It's unbelievable. All right, next. COVID stuff gets me fired up. Skip that. New Jersey, 3 others charged with voter fraud in mail-in election. Expected mail-in ballots in New Jersey stuffed hundreds in one mailbox. Politician Jackson solicited voters to hand over ballots. What's there to say? I've been telling you, and you know this. If they're willing to actively cheer against a medication that could save lives, if they're willing to kill old people in nursing homes by putting COVID patients there, if they're willing to cheer for riots, you think they're beyond election fraud? They're going to pull out all the stops. And by the way, I was one of the people that you heard talking in January, February, saying Trump supporters are making a huge mistake saying that Trump's going to win 49 out of 50 states, that he has it in the bag. Because never underestimate how much the establishment will be corrupt. They'll just straight up, they'll have election fraud. They'll just straight up say that the tallies are wrong. They don't care. They'll do everything possible to maintain power. Their mistake in 2016 was believing their own smugness and believing that they were going to win no matter what. They will not make that mistake again. They will cheat to the strongest ability they can. That's what the push for mail-in voting's about. And they all say, there's no evidence that there could be any fraud. Well, every day we see more and more evidence. Thank you. David on Twitch says, you seem like you need to run around the block. You get winded by talking. Typical overweight American conservative moron. Right. We get it, David. Oftentimes, especially on Twitch is so left-wing. I deal with you morons one after another. I try to be polite and I shame you. So all you could do is go on your little, we'll come on and we'll insult his weight or something like that. But you're just an anonymous douchebag that's unwilling to even show your face. But yeah, I'm sure we'll take your opinions correctly. Yes, I am trying to lose weight. You're right to fat shame me. I tell my supporters to fat shame me all the time. Congratulations. You're a terrible person without an argument. And don't worry, I'll still support you in your rights though as an American. Unless you're not an American, I still support and wish you will. But if you're going to insult me, come up with something new. Stupid. Next. My buddy Drone Tech puts this out. Antifa terrorists are now in suburbs threatening lives. I think we're about to reach a tipping point. Andy No from August 9th says they're yelling at people in windows in the suburbs. We're going to burn your building down. We know where you live. As Antifa have taken to Portland residential areas to riots, they also assaulted and intimidated residents there. Tonight, they threatened a house who looked out the window. Now, weren't we told that once Trump said, okay, we'll bring the troops back from the federal courthouse, that all the riots would end? How's that look? Again, remember, I said that I wanted the police to deal with this or the National Guard because the next step is vigilante justice. And then when that happens, all of the people on the left that have said, what riots? There aren't riots. Or the riots are only because of the police. All of them will say, oh my God, the horror. Can you believe that people fought back? All these disgusting Trump supporting racists. Oh my God, look what they did. They have no problem with the murder, the intimidation, the arson, the violence, the vandalism, the looting that occurs every single day. They don't care about that. As soon as you fight back, you're a terrible person. Don't believe me? Ask the McCloskeys in St. Louis. They were expected, what you're expected to do when Antifa comes is you're allowed to turn, so when they're stabbing you in the throat, maybe they hit your shoulder. That's all you're allowed to do. You can't fight back. You can't push back. You can't call the police. You can't arm yourself. You're not allowed to do any of that. But these crybabies that support this stuff, they would be the very first people to say, where are the police? You remember in the Chaz zone? Where are the ambulance? Where are the police when someone got murdered there? You used violence to intimidate all of them from coming there. More on this, Tim Pohl from August 9th. This is the worst we've seen Portland for a while, and that's saying something, seeing as how the riots have been going for over 60 days. Seems like once the Democratic politicians cut a deal with the feds, they just gave up and let Black Lives Matter burn and destroy. This is more scenes from Portland. There's your peaceful protest. There it is. One second here. Just give me one sec. I gotta do something quick. Let's see here. Checking the chat. Yeah, Ken, the 5-year-old white child that was murdered in North Carolina. Yeah, we'll be talking about that in Sarah Corrier's channel at 10 p.m. tonight. So, yeah, I'm not talking about it much here. What's up, Paul? Nice to see you. Let me, real quick here. Just going to take care of something. Okay. Now we're good. All right, moving on. Next. Yeah, the protests are still going on. Protests, that's what they call them, right? 60-something days now in Portland. Brian Stelter says, this is on August 9th, when you see entire media companies essentially exist to tear down Joe Biden, is there an equivalent on the left tearing down Trump? Guest says, there really isn't. This is from CNN. It is undoubtable that almost the entirety of the mainstream media exists to only tear down Donald Trump, to defend the establishment. They push the Russia lie for how many months? That's what they do. And yet they're so smug. It's just like Black Lives Matter. They say, oh, it's systemic racism, institutional racism. All of the institutions are against us. Name me one institution that's against Black Lives Matter. Now the media, Brian Stelter saying, oh, the media is just so attacking Joe Biden. Is there anyone in the media attacking Trump? It's laughable. I did that story yesterday, so. Joe Biden says, August 9th, it's been 6 years since Michael Brown's life was taken in Ferguson, reigniting a movement. We must continue the work of tackling racism. James Gagliano says, Michael Brown committed strong-arm robbery of a convenience store in Ferguson, then violently attacked police officers. Obama's Justice Department, led by Attorney General Holder, investigated this officer-involved shooting, determined it was a justified use of deadly force. Why gaslight this? And I've been seeing this happen over and over again. There were people in the NBA, Greg Popovich did the same thing. And what they're doing is... they keep bringing up the lie of hands up, don't shoot. They're just bringing it up over and over. The truth doesn't matter. Joe Biden, your Democratic candidate for president, is continuing to push the lie of systemic racism by citing an individual case where the Attorney General for Barack Obama, a black man who called himself Obama's wingman, Eric Holder, looked at the case personally with the Department of Justice and determined that it was a justified shoot. Yet still they're pointing to that shoot to say, see, this proves racism. It was justified. They're celebrating a man in Michael Brown as a hero that committed strong-arm robbery, then grabbed for an officer's gun in an attempt to murder the officer. But trust them when they talk about these stories today. Remember we were told that the lockdowns work? Right? And they look at the uptick in cases in the United States and they say, oh, that's because the lockdowns got lifted, right? We should have did it more like Europe. Daily cases in Romania. Whoops, they're skyrocketing. Daily cases in Belgium. Whoops, they're on the uptick again. Daily cases in France. Whoops, they're on the uptick again. Daily cases in Spain. Whoops, they're on the uptick again. But hey, we should have been more like them, and then our cases would have never went back up. Right? Right? Remember, with the lockdowns, if you read the Imperial College model and you listened closely to what they were saying about why the lockdowns were necessary, they admit in that paper, the paper that was used by the US and the UK to justify the lockdowns, they admit that it would need to lock down for at least 18 months or until there was a vaccine for the lockdowns to have an effect. In other words, if you lock down for a year and then say, okay, we're going to relieve some of the lockdown restrictions, it would be like you never locked down. Everyone would just get sick then. So what they're really suggesting is we needed to stay locked down for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The American people willing to do that? Why weren't you just honest with them? Why did you say 15 days to flatten the curve? Why even talk about flattening the curve? If you knew that the experts you were relying on were saying all along, we're going to have to lock down for probably 2 years, if not longer. Next, on Fox News, A.G. Barr notes how media role in Russiagate wasn't to be a watchdog against government abuse of power, but to be attack dogs without critical reasoning. I say that all the time. The media does not hold truth to power. The media conceals the truth for the powerful. James Wood shows. Gun-toting terrorists created by the Democrats unlawfully restrain unarmed citizens. There you go. Checkpoints, papers, please, says a bunch of armed terrorists. They have no right to stop you on the road. They have no right to pull a gun on you because you're unwilling to listen to them stop. Then they chase the vehicle when the vehicle tries to drive away. You see how this works? What is their authority to be able to do this? They don't get to do this. Every single one of these terrorists should be thrown in jail for the maximum time allowed. 10 years, 20 years, I don't care. Every single one of them. Next. There are literally hundreds of looters in Chicago right now hitting all the stores. This happened on August 10th. Keep that in mind. Next story. Now I want you to hear this one. Let me make sure you can hear it. This one's really good. This is the chief of police. Now listen quick, because it's quick, because the mayor's going to butt in real quick here. But I want you to listen. This chief of police officer is asked, do you think the fact that you allowed rioting... So for those of you who don't know, in Chicago the other night, they looted downtown Chicago. All of these expensive department stores, totally looted all of them. So bad that they actually raised the bridges in Chicago to try to keep the looters centralized in just the stores they were in. Nothing to do with Michael Floyd or with George Floyd. Black Lives Matter, though. Black Lives Matter. Remember, my buddy Prime Cades and the Black Lives Matter people I've talked to on Twitch, they all told me, no, the only reason there's looting and stuff, they're all peaceful. They're just responding to the police. Well, here we see what happens when the police aren't there. They're still looting. Huh. But it's all justified. It's all cool. Because, as he admits, as Prime Cades admits, he's a Marxist, so of course he's for this. He wants Marxism. He wants the destruction of our economy, of course. So I want you to listen. So a reporter finally asks a real question. Listen to what the chief starts saying, and then listen to how the mayor comes in.
It almost sounds as though you're saying this is the reason we haven't is because the courts and the prosecutors were not doing their job, that they were going too easy on the looters from the last time around.
Don't take it from me. Just go by what's been done.
I'm just asking.
I don't want to do your job for you, but just go by what's been done. There were no consequences for the people arrested.
Greg, let's be clear. I mean, and don't bait us, okay?
Now, did you hear? That's the chief of police, a black gentleman, clearly saying, yes, the reason this looting's happening is because last time it happened, our AG, our mayor, all of the people that are supposed to charge these criminals, let them go. There were no consequences. That's why it happened. The mayor comes in and says, don't bait us. In other words, don't blame us for the problems we created. How dare you let everyone know that, yes, we allowed these people to riot and loot without consequences, and now they're doing it again. Don't bait us. Don't bait us. Let's hear what she has to say to finish.
Do not bait us. Do not bait us. This is a serious situation. People are concerned about their safety. Officers are concerned about their safety, so don't bait us. What we're saying is, as a result of what happened last night, there have to be consequences. We've got teams of people that are aggressively out there identifying the people responsible, looking at the plates, and we're going to bring them to justice. But when we do, and we do make those arrests, our expectation is that this is going to be treated with the level of seriousness that it should be, period. Don't try to bait us, mischaracterize, pit one against the other. We're not playing that. We are in a serious situation here, and we need a serious response. That's what we're saying, period.
I'm not trying to bait you, Mayor. I'm just asking a question that seems
Ask and answer. You have another question?
Yes, I do.
Now, you see how that works? Let me ask you this, Miss Mayor. Wasn't it a serious situation before when officers feared for their life and business owners feared for their property? It wasn't serious then? It was okay then, because that's what you did. Your administration left them all off the hook. Now, when it happens again, you're like, oh, of course they're going to be brought to justice. Why weren't they last time? This is the arrogance that the left gets away with. They're never asked a difficult question. Every time they're asked a difficult question, which happens like, what, once every 6 months, they just crumble. How dare you ask me a hard question? If Donald Trump would have left a bunch of right-wing rioters off the hook and said, hey, you know what? I'm telling my DOJ not to prosecute those people. And then they rioted again. Do you think the media would be like, well, we don't want to bait Mr. Trump and ask him why he let these people off the hook in the first place. We don't want to bait him. You think that's how that would play? If Trump or a Republican did this, it would be a national headline. The media would be going nuts. They encouraged rioting. They let the rioters off the hook. They didn't prosecute them. They told their police to allow it to occur. And predictably, it happened again. And they blamed Donald Trump. Just like they took COVID patients, they put them in nursing homes, which predictably killed a bunch of nursing home people. And then they pointed to those deaths and said, see how bad COVID is? See how bad it is? That's why we need to take your rights away. We have to sacrifice because of the poor decisions that these Democratic leaders have made. That's what they say. That's ridiculous. It's not baiting to point out your disastrous policies are directly responsible for this rioting and looting. Almost done. Next. California's public health director abruptly resigns amid questions about state's virus testing data. Yep, turns out tens of thousands of tests were reported inaccurately. I don't have nothing more to say about it. Next, Andy No again. Here's your peaceful protesters.
The gospel of Jesus Christ in order to be saved. Salvation is still available to all. Salvation is still available to all that believe. All that believe are justified from all things from which you cannot be justified by the law of Moses.
Independent press. Independent press. Back off.
You wonder why they're so for masks? Do you see why now? Every time you see this violence at these peaceful Black Lives Matter protests and Antifa protests, you see all the, it's only one or two bad apples, but you see everyone else surround. Notice before they attack him, what they do is they surround him with umbrellas because they're trying to get it so that you can't record on video what's actually going on. So here you see the peaceful protesters beating a street preacher up. They use the umbrellas because before they beat him, they try to cover so that the police will never be able to identify from the video who was the person who's responsible for assaulting him. And then they attack the free press and say, stop recording, stop recording. That's why they all wear masks. That's why they have the umbrellas, because they're the opposite of transparent. They want to be violent, thuggish terrorists that can't be held accountable. That's the entire goal. If they truly were a peaceful, worthwhile movement, they would be encouraging everyone to film them. Why aren't they? Only people that have something to hide actively attack the press that are trying to record public events. Now, it's different in your own home and your own privacy. That's one thing. But when you're on public, if you're having a peaceful demonstration, you would want as much attention brought to it as possible. Why are they constantly telling people not to record? Because they know they're not peaceful. That's why. So there you go. More of the peaceful protesters that you remember Jerry Nadler said, that's a myth. That's not happening. There's no violence. If that would happen one time, if one time you would see an anti-Trump person show up to a Trump rally, it would be national news. He's sitting there saying, Trump sucks, Trump sucks. They beat him. They chase the press out. It'd be national. Oh my God, Trump and his supporters are so violent. But it happens every day on the left. No problem. Every day it's happening in Portland. Every day. Next, more reason to cease panic over COVID. Percent of cases who later died, graph case by date, continues to decline since the May 1st peak. Under 2% since mid-June. Under 0.5% for those under 65. Rate for 65 plus have been cut in half. Yeah. See where we're at? We were told that, oh, it's going to be 6% dead, 8% dead, 10% dead. Nope. Less than 1%. Don't report that, though, do they? Yes, more people are getting infected because we have more testing. Look, I don't have the data in front of me, but I've done this on the show before. If we trust their numbers, again, you would expect, if the virus is spreading even more, if even more people have it now, if it's uptick and spreading, this is what you would expect. The more people we test, the percentage of those tested that have the virus would remain stable or increase, right? So think of it this way. You only test 100 people. 10% of them have COVID, right? So you're testing every day. 1,000 people, 100 have COVID. 1,000 people, 100 have COVID. 1,000 people, 100 have COVID. That's going on every day. Then you bump that up to 10,000. You would expect then, the next day, there would be 1,000 people that tested positive. 10% consistently. If all of a sudden you bump it up to 10,000 and you're still getting, instead of 100, you're now getting 200 people. So you're testing 10 times as much, but the rate of people positive have only doubled. That means that your percentage went from 10% to, what, 2%. That is a decline in the disease, in the infected rates. But if you just look at the amount of people testing positive, if you just look at that number, you'd say, oh my goodness, look at how many more people are testing positive. Yes, because you've taken 10 times as many tests. And when we look at the actual data, that's what we see. We've more than doubled the test, so you would expect to see more than double of the infected cases. But instead, it's nowhere near that. So the infections rate, again, according to their numbers, is declining. And when you bring this up to people, they're like, of course you're going to say more testing. Yes, of course. I'm not even going to touch this. New York Post. New York Police Department does nothing to lift finger as 11-year-old is beaten in broad daylight. Welcome to the new world. Don't wear a mask and go to the park, the police will arrest you. Want to beat an 11-year-old in front of broad daylight and in front of the cops? Yep, no problem. Paul Sperry says, breaking, health officials have now determined that COVID-19 death rate for those under 70 is just 0.04%, less than the common flu. Shut down the world over something that's less lethal than the flu for the vast majority of people. Now, does that mean, but wait a minute, look at all the old people that died? Yes, exactly. That's why we should have been taking our resources to protect the elderly population instead of spreading those resources out to locking down everyone. I hear this all the time. But wait a minute, if we didn't lock down, what if someone would have went to Walmart because they weren't locked down and then they visited my grandma and gave my grandma the disease? That's why it's easier to lock your grandma down than to lock everyone else down. So you just say no one's allowed to get in to see grandma except people that test clear and don't have COVID. That's it. It's that simple. Why would you, if you say 5% of our population is really at risk for this disease, we'll lock down the 95% instead of the 5%. What kind of sense does that make? There's Kamala Harris believing the Biden accusers. Shaun King. This is the guy from Black Lives Matter, one of their leaders. He says, and this was, oh geez, what's the dates on this? This was from last year. He says, I'll be frank and tell you two Democrats that I'm 99% sure I won't be supporting, primarily because of their dismal history on criminal justice reform over the course of their entire careers. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They helped build and advance mass incarceration. Then from yesterday, that's it for me. I'm incredibly proud to see a brilliant black woman, an HBCU grad, chosen as vice presidential nominee. I've done political work my whole life. It's rarely things dreams are made of. Kamala Harris is the most progressive VP nominee in American history. Do you see how you're being lied to? Do you see? Do you think these people are serious? It's not like he said, look, I don't really like Harris, but hey, it's still better than Trump. That's not what he said. He went from saying one quote, I don't like Kamala Harris, she has a dismal track record, to saying, dreams have came true. Kamala Harris, a dream come true. Why would we take anything this guy says seriously? Kamala Harris, former press secretary, now runs communications at Twitter. I wonder what kind of power he wields. Conflict of interest? Of course. Twitter should be held accountable because they're no longer a publisher. They're no longer a platform. They are a publisher, which means when they know that things like libel, slander, and calls to violence are being made on their platform and choose to do nothing, they should have it come back on them with criminal and civil liability. And they should also be held responsible under campaign finance violation laws, because they're clearly just an arm of the Democratic Party. Next, Dr. David Samadi. The gold medal for handling COVID-19 goes to Sweden. They didn't collapse their economy or go crazy with restrictions. Now looking at the results, they seem to have done well. Many knocked them for their methods, but looking at the stats, they proved everyone wrong. Remember, they said without the lockdowns, we would have 10 to 100 times more people would die. They said, for example, in the UK, it would be what, like 5,000 people would die if we did the lockdowns, but 500,000 would die if we didn't. So you would expect that. I said it back then. Go back and watch my videos. I said, if that's true, then we'll look at a place like Sweden when it's all over and we'll say, my God, it's horrific. They are easily the worst country in the entire world for deaths. They're more than 10 to 100 times worse than any other country. Instead, they're right in the middle. They're doing better than the UK. Right in the middle. And they didn't do lockdowns. Now, when you bring this up, people say, well, Sweden's a different country. We can't compare it with Sweden. You can't do the comparison with Sweden. You can't do that. It's different, so it's okay for them to not lock down. Okay, well, isn't Florida a different state than New York? Isn't central Pennsylvania different than the urban areas in Pennsylvania? So why wouldn't we have different policies for them? Instead, it's a one-size-fits-all lockdown for everyone, isn't it? And this last story, my friend Carlos sends me this. I'll just play the audio. This one's worth playing the whole audio.
Downtown area along Michigan Avenue and in the Gold Coast, board-up crews are hard at work. Debris is everywhere, and businesses are still recovering from looting Monday morning. Thousands of people came into downtown in carloads, breaking windows, clashing with police, and causing widespread damage. While a lot of high-end retailers and department stores were hit, not many expected the Ronald McDonald House, a charity for families with children in the hospital, to have their doors smashed.
They were very concerned because there was a lot of activity right in front of the house. People, making choices that could put them at risk and put our families at risk. So The staff was frightened.
Over 30 families and their sick children were inside, along with staff helplessly watching everything unfold outside.
They're already in a really, really difficult spot, and having this kind of stress, additional stress, and worry about being able to get to and from the hospital, even though we're 5 blocks away because of safety concerns, it's just doubling the strain.
More than 400 officers were deployed after police learned of a social media post encouraging people to loot business downtown and on the north side. Second Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins believes the city should have been better prepared.
It's a recipe for ineffective law enforcement, and that's what we saw with this wide-scale looting, where the police officers were largely in a passive posture, letting it happen because they didn't know how to stop it. And in many cases, if they did try to intervene, it was a threat to their own life and safety.
In the end, 2 people were shot, 13 police officers injured, and more than 100 arrests were made. Here at the Ronald McDonald House, thankfully no one was injured. The charity does want to remind the community of Chicago through this pandemic and, of course, through the looting, they are still helping families in need, and they do that through donations, of course. And you can find more information about the Ronald McDonald House on our website at abc7chicago.com. Reporting live here in Streeter.
Here's your peaceful protesters. Go ahead. Go ahead. I only have one person watching on Twitch. Maybe someone will watch a replay of it. All the left-wing Twitch people I debate. Go ahead. Tell me about these peaceful protesters. They had it coming, right? Hey, listen, if you're a sick kid or if you're the family of a sick kid and you went to Ronald McDonald Charity, listen, that's white privilege. You deserve to be looted. You deserve to be terrorized. You deserve it. It's white privilege to be upset about these looters. They're peaceful looters, peaceful protesters. They're looting for America, patriotic looting. That's what they're doing. This looting is to fight white supremacy. And if you're against that, if you're a sick kid and you're in a charity, then you're just further perpetuating white supremacy. That's what you're doing. They should have heard these kids. That would have been best, right? Right, Black Lives Matter? Right, Democrats? To your foot soldiers, that's what they should have did. These kids had it coming. Give all your possessions up. You're sick, you still have too much. You're privileged. You're white and sick. My God, ask Oprah. You're still got your whiteness. Who cares if you have cancer? Right? 4-year-old girl? Acknowledge your privilege. Give up your possessions to the looters. That's where we're at as a country right now. One of the major political parties supporting this shit. And if you're on the left and you think it's okay and you're like, well, that was just one bad incident. I hope that they don't come for you. Because when they do, there probably won't be anyone left to stand up for you. All my friends in Clarion, where I grew up, oh, Rob, what's wrong with you? You're a racist? You're against these riots? They're not riots, they're peaceful protests. How dare you? You must be racist. I hope they don't come to your town. Don't call the police when they do. Don't come crying to me. Terrorizing sick kids. That's Democrats for you. That's Black Lives Matter. Now you wonder why I'm against it? Oh, but that's not the real Black Lives Matter. That's, no. Isn't it nice? It must be nice to sit there and parse out. Black Lives Matter is only what I want to say it is at this moment. Well, we keep seeing the riotings, we keep seeing the looting, we keep seeing all this crap in Democratic-controlled areas. We keep seeing it coming from groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. But no, it's not them, it's not them. Ignore it. Not real socialism, not real communism. What I want's different. You can't look at all the historical examples. No. I'll just change words and meanings and who I identify with in groups every single day. They're a good thing. Black Lives Matter is a good thing. Now, if one cop does something bad, that's indicative of all police. Now we need to defund all the police. Ronald McDonald Charities. Imagine. Imagine you have a kid. I'll have my first kid here in January, hopefully. I went through one of my best friends. I'm a godparent of a kid who had so many horrible health problems when they were born. Didn't know if they would make it. Who needed charities like, I actually think they took advantage of Ronald McDonald Charity. But there were charities like that helped them out. Imagine you have a sick kid. And you're a family. And you got to deal with this shit. Terrorized as people are smashing in the windows of the charity you're at, trying to get to your sick kid. And the mayor of Chicago, who knows about says, don't bait us, don't bait us. That's the Democrats, right there. That's your Democrat voter. That's Black Lives Matter. I don't care how much they try to tell you, no, that's not us. You knew this was happening, and you know that eventually they're going to kill kids, just like happened in North Carolina the other day. They're going to kill them. And then what are you going to say? Oh, who could have saw it coming? That 14-year-old that was killed in Chaz? They just ignore it. Who cares that that kid's dead? Just another body to stack up on to get more power. Throw him on the pile. Put him with all the old people the Democrats killed at COVID. More bodies to blame on Republicans, to blame on people like me. You kill them, you blame the other side and say that justifies me having more power. And no one will have the balls in the Republican Party to call it out. Well, on that note, I'm a little furious. Keep your anti-Semitism out of my Twitch stream. You can say what you want. It's garbage. I criticize the government of Israel all the time. Anywho. Yeah. A little furious about that situation. But that's what it is. That's what we see with the Democrats. So I'll be in an event on that note this weekend where I'll be talking to some Republicans. So I'll bring this up. I'll try to do it in a more calm, articulate way. But remember that. If you're on the left and you're watching and you're like, I hate Donald Trump, I support these protesters, I hope that you and your kid never get sick and you're not in a situation where rioters are trying to kill you. That's what you deserve. I'll defend you, but that's what you deserve. So, all right. I should clean up a little before my wife gets here. Thanks so much for sitting through me with this channel. Oh, I thought for a minute my mic hadn't been on. I was going to say, how long have I been ranting without my mic on? You guys are the best. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Even those that come on and say Jews are super terrible. Even those that say I'm fat and I need to go for a jog. I appreciate you all. You guys are great. I do think it's awesome that people are willing to listen to me. I got 5 people on Twitch now. Bernie for president. Yeah, that'd be a great, the Bernie voters trying to break into the Ronald McDonald charity. That'd be a great advertisement for Bernie. Right? Vote for Bernie. Aren't you tired of charities providing services for your sick kids? Vote Bernie Sanders. His foot soldiers will destroy the crap out of any building trying to house your sick kid. Sounds good. Hey, they're just dismantling white supremacy, so it's all good in the hood. Oh, by the way, we're getting rid of the police too, so don't call them. A social worker will be with you in the next 6 to 8 months to ask your feelings on the fact that your kid that was getting terminal care was brutally beaten by vigilantes that were patriots that were fighting to dismantle white supremacy. Bernie Sanders 2020. Yeah, sounds good. The Twitch chat, you guys make me want to stick around more. It's great. We got anti-Semitism going on. How do I feel about Jewish money in politics? It's a question of how do I feel about any money in politics more than do I think that it's bad that let me say this. I think the situation with Israel is complicated. I think sometimes we see that Israel gets blamed unjustly for things that they shouldn't be, and other times Israel is acting as an aggressor and because of their influence on American politics is dragging the U.S. with it. Both of those things could be true simultaneously. And you can see it because you see, for example, I know when I see the establishment on the left and the right agree with something, that's probably a bad thing. So when they say, for example, we have to stay in Syria, we have to stay in Afghanistan, I know that that's garbage. That's them pushing more military-industrial complex wars, right? I know that. But when you see the elites like Obama that are giving so much lip service to places like Iran and being so anti-Israeli, and then you see neocons on the other side that are so much defending Israel no matter what, it makes me question what's really going on there. And I think that the situation's more complicated than people want to make it on either side. So you have the people that are like, the Holocaust never happened, they're disgusting, they hate all Jews, and many of them are white identitarians. If you're a white identitarian, I have no time of day for you. Identity politics is garbage. I don't care if you're a black supremacist, white supremacist. I don't care. I am no ally of yours. Totally against you. Someone says, how do I feel about blacks? I talk about how I feel about black people all the time. I think that blacks are humans like the rest of us, and we should try to treat people as humans as much as possible instead of focusing on skin color. I think that an undue focus on skin color is always a negative and always causes racial strife. I think that it's a shame that both parties in this country have exacerbated the problems in the inner city black community, primarily black communities, for years and years. I think both parties have been actively engaged in it. The Republicans basically do nothing. The Democrats issue policies that make the situation worse for them. So, yeah, I don't care that Hitler possibly did good things. Hitler's a terrible person. I will enjoy my mutt race in 40 years. I don't care. I have no time of day for you white supremacists. None at all. I find you to be disgusting. You're everything you profess to hate. In fact, white supremacy and black supremacy are two sides to the same coin. The biggest ally of Black Lives Matter are white supremacists like you. You both love each other because you want to separate. So you have the black separatists and the white separatists. And so your greatest allies are the people you claim to hate the most. You're truly disgusting and revolting, just like the people that advocate black supremacy are. I don't care that I'm not part of that. I'm not a Jewish All right. Let's see here. Yeah. I'll argue about Israel, but I draw the line at Hitler was good. Kill myself, Marxist scum. Get off my Twitch, Jewish supremacists. You guys are great. Do I think destroying buildings ends racism? No, of course not. It does make me sick. Liberals are worse for black people? Probably true. So, yeah. You were blocked, Mr. Hitler guy, so you can keep saying what you want, but white liberals do think they own black people. It's terrible. So, alrighty. Let me check my YouTube stream real quick. You guys on YouTube are missing out, man. Twitch is where it's at. Yeah. Identity politics is bad. This is what I'm talking about not being a hypocrite. You don't get to be like, I don't like groups like Black Lives Matter and it's racist and blah, blah, blah. By the way, I'm a white supremacist. You're engaged. Again, they're two sides to the same coin. You don't get to be like, I hate the white supremacist. I hate the white nationalist. Oh, but I like the Nation of Islam. I'm a black nationalist. You're both disgusting. Now, the difference is, historically, the white nationalists have done worse things, but currently, white nationalists are roundly rejected by everyone with power, as they should be. But the black nationalists, heck, the Nation of Islam was running security at George Floyd's funeral. We had the entire mainstream media and Democratic Party defend Black Hebrew Israelites, a radical black nationalist group, against kids because they thought the kids were Trump supporters. So it was okay. Black racists are better than Trump supporting kids. So which one's more dangerous right now? Probably the group that has the backing of the people in power, which are the black nationalists. So, all right, I do have to go. Sorry, I got a little distracted by that on Twitch there. Yeah, freedom of association. Totally agree with that. Yep. I'm fine with that. If you want to live in an area, I think that I don't even have a problem with, I think if you say, I own a business and I only want to serve white people, that's fine. You should be allowed to do that. But I hope that it gets called out and I hope that you lose your business totally. I do. But you should be allowed to serve who you want. Fine. In fact, we used to run this argument in debate. I have to think about it a little more, but I think that's what I think. We had this argument in debate when I debated that said we should make racism legal, except if you want to be racist, you just have to apply and say, hey, I would like to not serve black people. That's fine, but you have to put a sign up on your window that says we refuse to serve black people. And then what'll happen will be so many people will refuse to come to your restaurant or whatever, and you'll just go out of business. So good luck, But that's what I agree with. Yeah, you're exactly right, Eminem. You say, if a black guy was giving a speech on experience with racism, you could bet that a white liberal woman would try to cut him off. Yeah, that happens all the time. You're sorry, this guy's a turnoff. Me? Well, I'm sorry if you find me to be a turnoff. Not for everyone, but yeah, I don't buy into the identity politics. When you say it's okay for white people to have identity politics, that's fine. But then you have to understand that you support black people having identity politics, right? One last thing. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for the stream today. I had a lot of fun. Sorry that I kind of got distracted with identity politics here at the end. But no, it was a lot of fun. And I really do appreciate you all. So I'm going to head out now. Thanks so much. I'll be on Sarah Corrier's channel at 10 p.m. tonight. So please join me there. Thanks so much, everyone. And as always, have a good one.